I'm David Coatney, and I'm a web designer. The beauty of web design is that my clients are scattered all over the country. That gives me the ability to live where I want, travel where I want, and do work on the road. Along the way, I like to check out unique places, so I encourage you to join me on these adventures. Everyone knows about mainstream hotels and franchise restaurants, but I want to hit up the truly unique. From weird restaurants and lodging to unusual laws, history, and towns, this is the states you think you know. This week, we're in the state of Alaska. Alaska is known as the last frontier, a land teeming with wildlife, rugged wilderness, and beauty unsurpassed. Alaska is the largest state in the country and has over 100,000 glaciers, 17 of the 20 highest peaks in the United States, and more coastline than the rest of the U.S. combined. And in a land of extremes, we'll begin our journey at its northernmost point. When most people think of Alaska, they probably think of glacier cruises, fjords, cities like Anchorage and Juneau, or perhaps one of Alaska's 8 national parks. But this journey begins far away from all of that. Our first stop takes us 320 miles north of the Arctic Circle, to the northernmost city in the United States, Barrow, Alaska, now known as Utqiaġvik. The only town in the world that is larger than and further north of Barrow is Tiksi, Russia. In fact, you're so far north, you would need to look south to see the northern lights. Would you still call them the northern lights? Maybe we'll just refer to them as Aurora Borealis, just to be on the safe side. Barrow is classified as a polar desert, receiving less than 5 inches of rainfall equivalent in an average year. Temperatures stay well below freezing for most of the year, and even in the summer, rarely crack 50 degrees Fahrenheit. In the winter, it can easily dip to 40 below zero. Days and nights can be quite unusual here as well. Once the sun sets in mid-November, residents won't see another sunrise for 2 months. The opposite can be said in summer. We're filming in June, and sunset today will occur around 2 o'clock in the morning. Sunrise will occur around 3, and it doesn't really ever get dark. So if you're not accustomed to sleeping in daylight, you might have a problem. Barrow is also the cultural center of the Utqiaġvik tribe, who have lived here for more than 1,500 years. Of the 4,400 residents who live here, the majority of them are Alaskan native. Now, every year around this time, they have an annual whaling festival. The start of whaling season is an important part of native life and is celebrated each year around the time of the summer solstice. One of the more popular events at this festival is what's known as the blanket toss. Now, while it sounds like fun, and I'm sure it is, it's not entirely without meaning. You see, at the start of season, whalers would need a way to spot the whales out in the distance. So what they would do is they would bring a giant blanket aboard the boat, and it was someone's job to be tossed high in the air in order to gain a better vantage point for spotting. Whaling has been a prominent way of life for the Inupiats here for over 1,500 years. Many of the locals still rely on hunting whales, seals, walruses, and catching fish for their sources of food. And whale blubber is still a prominent part of the local diet. Now, for those that want the amenities of a modern grocery store, it's here now, but you're gonna pay for it. Now, this is your everyday low price for a bag of apples. And if you want some lunch meat, that is $12.19 for lunch meat, so definitely a little more than back home. $10 for a bottle of apple juice. So a pack of water, $25.49 for water. If you like orange juice, it's $11.99 for one of the small ones, or $17.59 for one of the larger orange juices. And you can get shampoo for the low price of $18.29. Have laundry to do? For $36.99, you could have some laundry detergent. Why are the prices so high, you ask? Simple. Follow me. This is the end of the road. Quite literally. We're about 2 miles outside of town and we've reached the end of the line. There are no roads leading in or out of Barrow. On one side of town, you have the Arctic Ocean, which is completely frozen over 8 months out of the year. And on the other side of town, you have the frozen Arctic tundra. Sandwiched in between the two is the little town of Barrow. At just 21 square miles, it is the very definition of isolated. Which brings us to the airport. The only way to get here is by plane, on a very long flight to the northernmost point in the country. That means their cost to transport food here is high. If their costs are high, your costs are high. Pretty simple. With flights coming in and out of Barrow each day, the airport is an important part of the community. They even have a special type of aircraft built specifically to support areas like this. It's a half cargo, half passenger flight, with the front half of the airplane dedicated to cargo and the back half allowing room to bring passengers in. Since the needs of this small community doesn't really warrant a full-size cargo flight, these types of planes work perfectly. You know, it really does feel as if you're standing at the end of the earth. It's almost surreal. Now, this whalebone arch behind me is sometimes referred to as the gateway to the Arctic, and for most of the year, the ocean beyond it is completely frozen. Now, in case you're wondering, this arch is made from the bones of a bowhead whale, and some of the surrounding boats and structures are also made from whale bones. It's sort of a monument to the culture here, since much of the population is still sustained from the bowhead whale. You know, it's crazy to think we are just as close to the North Pole as we are the state's own capital. Something else to watch out for here in town are polar bears. It's actually quite common to see them wandering around town. Now, since polar bears are the only species of bear known to actively hunt humans, it's a good idea to keep your eyes peeled, just in case. One of the biggest issues a town this remote has to deal with is lack of infrastructure, lack of transportation needs. I actually booked my hotel 6 months in advance, and I think there was one hotel that had a couple rooms left, and if I had waited a week later, I would have been out of luck, so I barely found anything. I also booked my rental car 6 months in advance and still had to be put on a waiting list. So if you're planning a trip up this far, particularly around the time of the summer solstice, which is when I'm here, you might want to start your planning pretty early. Every state has strange laws still on the books, things that make us scratch our heads. They're rarely enforced, but still entertaining. These are the strange laws of Alaska. It is considered an offense to push a live moose out of a moving airplane. Okay, this sounds like a really bad sequel to Snakes on a Plane. It is against the law to give a moose beer. You don't want to get him drunk, trust me. He gets confused, boards the wrong flight. It's a big mess. While shooting bears is legal in Alaska, waking a sleeping bear for the purposes of taking a photograph is prohibited. Apparently, some people need a law to tell them not to do this. Dog grooming is illegal in Juneau, and they say politicians don't care about the concerns of the poodle community. Way to go, Juneau. Owners of flamingos may not let their pets into barbershops. This is a problem in Alaska. Alaska has more of this than any other state. Is it A, active volcanoes, B, 14,000 plus foot mountains, C, tornadoes, or D, lighthouses? The answer when we return. When many people think of Alaska, they think of ice, snow, and cold weather, but that's only during part of the year. Alaska also has nice green summers with temps in the 70s, unless of course you're at the Ice Museum Hotel where it's -7 degrees Celsius year-round. Today, I'm at Chena Hot Springs Resort to visit the Aurora Ice Museum Hotel, the world's largest year-round ice structure. And believe me, it is quite the marvel.
What makes this a unique experience is we're in Alaska. We do have a summer that is 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and we were able to keep this running year-round. People from all over the world come and enjoy what we have to offer in art and in pleasure with the ice bar, where you can have an appletini. It's delicious. People come here and they're just amazed with all the art that we get to keep and just all the facts that we have to share and how we get all this art made. It's very interesting for everyone, and there's just a few places around the world that you can actually go into an ice museum. This is one of them, and you combine that with Aurora's hot springs. We're hot and cold year-round.
This has to be the most impressive ice sculpture I have ever seen. Apparently, it took over 300 hours and 6 weeks to create. It's also 15 years old, which when it comes to ice is an eternity. Absolutely breathtaking. Inside this igloo is a working ice xylophone. Let's check it out. Now, we obviously don't want to play too aggressively. It is, after all, ice. That's awesome.
The inspiration for this ice house was accumulation of maybe about 30 or 40 inventions that I invented in the 90s. I did a competition piece with all of these inventions, and the owner of the hot springs saw that, and it clicked in his brain. He said that would be cool to make a year-round attraction of that type of thing.
So this is the altar where they put on weddings, and it's become quite the popular spot for that. Now, normally, if you get cold feet at a wedding, that would be a bad thing. But here, it's pretty much expected. You're probably going to get cold feet.
We have packages that we combine with the rooms. That's included with the price if you buy a package.
Now, this is the polar bear room, also known as the blue room. They also have a red room, which is really cool. Now, you can actually stay here for the night, and they will provide you with caribou quilts and parkas to help keep you warm. There are 4 rooms available in the Ice Hotel, but they're also purchased with one of the regular rooms at the resort. That's in case you don't make it the whole night, which many people don't. No big deal, you could just retire back to your other room. I would stay here tonight if I weren't staying in a train. Give this a shot. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know, it is kind of cold.
If you want to just look at the art, it's just a $15 entrance fee. If you would like to drink and come to the Ice Museum, it's a $30 total.
And if you decide to stop for a drink at the ice bar, once you're done with your martini, you can even smash the glass. Mazel tov! Now, at my wedding, I stomped on the glass, but hey, this works. The Ice Museum Hotel would be a truly unique place to stay the night. But for this trip, I had other plans, and it was time to check in at the Aurora Express Bed and Breakfast. This charming B&B is made out of authentic Alaskan railroad cars, renovated to historical periods. There's 7 train cars or rooms in total, and each one has a unique story behind it.
Over 26 years ago, my grandmother, who had passed on 8 years earlier, came to me in a dream and showed me this train, the Aurora Express. She showed me the train and she says, "This is going to be yours. All you have to do is find the caboose."
She called the Alaska Railroad the next day here in Fairbanks, and they said, "Oh, we just happen to have this caboose sitting down at the rail yard. This guy bought it for his wife for their 20th anniversary."
And I said, "About this caboose, you want to sell me it?" "Oh, I don't know." He says, "I got that for my wife for our 10th anniversary. It's kind of special and all this." And so I said, "Oh, okay, listen up. Sell me that caboose, buy her a fur coat or a diamond ring, and you might get lucky for another 10 years.
He did. And my dad, she came home and said to my dad, "I gotta go pick up a caboose." And he thought it was like a toy for the kids. And so he's like, "Okay, let's go get it." She took him to the railroad and he was like, she goes, "Here's the caboose."
And he's like, "You didn't buy this?" And I go, "Well, yeah." I said, "I told you about the dream." But, you know, typical husband, he wasn't listening to me when I woke him up in the middle of the night. And he goes, "What are we going to do with this?" I said, "Don't worry about it. Can you move it?" He tips his baseball cap back and he says, "For you, babe, I'll move anything." So that is the caboose. It is named in honor of my grandmother, Nellie LaVision.
The Aurora Express has been offering guests a nostalgic escape into a bygone era since 1993. With its burgundy drapes trimmed in gold fringe and its gorgeous cherry-stained walls, these Victorian-style suites will transport you to another time in Alaska's history. You'll also be able to appreciate stunning views of the Tanana River and Alaskan mountain range.
You know, coming out here isn't just staying at a regular hotel. It's an experience. You come out here and you know, there's a lot of nostalgia in these old trains. Like, we're kind of keeping history alive in a way. And you get to see what it was like to sleep in an old train car. And you know, they have been renovated to be more comfortable, so that you're going to have a nice queen size bed and running water and a nice big bathroom, but you know, it's still definitely a train.
Now I will be staying in the Golden Ellie caboose tonight. This was the first room they ever had. This car is nice and private at the very end of the track, right next to a waterfall. You can even climb into the observation deck for amazing views of the surrounding area. It also has a bit of a luxurious feel, with golden ceilings, burgundy velvet drapes, lounge chairs, and a private bath. Each one of the cars comes with its own unique backstory and theme. The Bordello reflects the risque Bordello atmosphere of Fairbanks' past. The Arlene was used as a hospital car during World War II. The Can-Can Room is an homage to the Can-Can girls of the Gold Rush era and has an iron headboard that a lovesick man once carried across the Chillicoot Trail for his lady love. And then there's the National Emblem. The National Emblem was a 1956 Pullman sleeper car. It's also quite rare, as Pullman only made 11 of this particular model. Now, this car was owned by the Alaska Railroad and used to travel the Aurora route from Seward to Fairbanks. For a period of time, it even stayed in Denali Park, and soldiers would stay here for some R&R during the war. It has since been beautifully restored to its original state and is pretty much what you would expect for grand sleeper cars from that era, with a spacious sitting area, 4 small private rooms, each with a single bed, 2 baths, and it even has a shoe locker. Now, I've never actually seen one of these before, but there's a trap door where a porter guy would come in and shine your shoes.
I think that the feedback isn't more like, oh, the rooms were clean and the breakfast was nice, because they are both of those things. But they're more like, we met the hosts. They were second generation Alaskans. My mom worked on the pipeline and she met my dad, and they moved these trains up here. It's a different kind of insight into Alaska when you stay here. You get to meet the locals and get a little bit of that flavor.
The most recent addition to this train is the diner car. It's 85 feet long and has seating for 24 people. And I must say, the artwork in here is just as impressive as the food. The Aurora Express was certainly one stop worth making. Not only do you get to relax in an area of breathtaking natural beauty, but you also get to experience an authentic piece of Alaskan history. So what does Alaska have more of than any other state? If you guessed A, active volcanoes, then you guessed correctly. Alaska has a total of 141 active volcanoes. For comparison, Hawaii has 5. While in Fairbanks, I'm staying about 18 minutes from a town called North Pole, which is not to be confused with the true or magnetic North Poles. And speaking of North Pole, it's now time for your top 5 countdown of most interesting names for cities and towns in the state of Alaska. Coming in at number 5 is Chicken. And yes, they do have a statue of a giant chicken in the town of Chicken, along with some clever puns. Number 4, Lazy Mountain. Stupid mountain, doesn't ever do anything, just sits there. Ooh, look at me, I'm a mountain. Number 3, Funny River. I guess the next question is, what are they putting in the water? Number 2, Dead Horse, not to be confused with Dead Horse Point in Utah. And number 1 is the most un-Alaskan town ever, Unalaska. Hey, that's not very Alaska-like. On my way to Anchorage, I stopped by a town called Eagle River to speak with the spokesperson of Wolf Song of Alaska, a nonprofit dedicated to understanding the wolf through a combination of education, science, and public awareness.
So we are in Eagle River, Alaska with Tom Tallis, who is the director of Wolf Song of Alaska. And Tom, it's a beautiful place you have here.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. We wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
Oh, I don't blame you one bit. So now you guys are a nonprofit. Tell me what your mission is.
The mission is multifaceted with different focuses, but we concentrate on science, education, and public awareness.
Okay. Now, wolves are obviously such an important part of the ecosystem here. Why is education so important?
Basically due to the fact that there might be so much misinformation about wolves, what role they play in wildlife, in the environment in general.
You know, I recently watched a video called How Wolves Change Rivers, and I'm sure you've probably seen it.
Yes.
But I was blown away by the symbiotic effect that wolves had on the entire ecosystem there in Yellowstone after they had been reintroduced. What type of impact do wolves have on the ecosystem here in Alaska?
Well, what you're referencing is something that's actually happening in Alaska, in southeast Alaska, the archipelago wolves. And they were able to film wolves actually catching salmon in the streams and in the rivers down there. And it's just another example of, call it a myth or just lack of knowledge, that wolves do hunt. They don't kill, they hunt to survive. I mean, they do kill, but it's for survival. And without the wolves, much like the story in Yellowstone, without them it would not be good.
What is the future of Wolfsong of Alaska?
Pretty much to continue exactly what we're doing. We talked about the science and the education and public awareness, and it's just another opportunity for people to dispel misinformation and get correct, accurate information, and we want to continue in that direction and grow.
Well, Tom, appreciate you having me out here.
You're more than welcome. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you.
True or false? In the city of Talkeetna, a dead man was elected mayor and held the position for 20 years. The answer when we return. Of course, I couldn't come to Alaska without doing an Alaskan glacier cruise. And speaking of things that are uniquely Alaskan, Alaska is the only state that has grizzly bears, black bears, and polar bears. There are a lot of misconceptions about bears too. One of the things you'll hear some people say is if you ever get attacked by a bear, you should play dead. That's not always true. If it's a grizzly bear, that can actually be a good strategy, and if they see you're not moving, very often they'll just move on. Black bears tend to be very docile, but if they do attack you, it's probably because they're hungry and they intend to kill you. So in that situation, it's not a good idea to play dead with a black bear. You actually want to fight for your life. Now, as for polar bears, well, just avoid polar bears at all costs. That is probably the most dangerous species of bear. So did a dead man serve as mayor of Talkeetna? If you guessed false, you guessed correctly. However, a cat was elected as mayor in 1997. Stubbs the cat was a write-in candidate and proudly held the honorary title of Talkeetna mayor until his death in 2017. The residents thought he was a viable alternative to the less appealing human candidates. Our journey began with one of the most remote locations in the country, and that is where it's going to end too. I wanted to hit up the town of Whittier while I was here. Whittier is a small town. As of the last census, had a population of 208 people. What's most unique about this town, though, is that they all live in the same building. What makes it so isolated is that it's surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, and there's only one way in and out of Whittier, and that is through the longest highway tunnel in North America. We are about to head into the Anson-Anderson Tunnel, the longest tunnel in North America. Now, for many years, the only way to get through to Whittier was using the tunnel by train, no cars. But several years ago, they opened it up to cars. It's only wide enough for 1 car and is shared by both trains and cars traveling in both directions. Not all at once, of course, they take turns. This is actually a pretty impressive engineering feat. Aside from the sheer length, it was built to withstand negative 40-degree temperatures and 150-mile-per-hour winds. So I've been driving through the tunnel for about 5 minutes now, and I'm starting to get a little claustrophobic. I mean, we are underneath a mountainside on a train track that's only 1 car width with no end in sight. If you've never done it, it's an uneasy feeling for sure. Whittier is an absolutely beautiful town that actually started as a military base. The military wanted a location that was both secluded and protected by mountains, which they certainly found here. But it hasn't been a military base in several decades, and today the town actually receives quite a bit of tourism in the summer. So I mentioned the entire town lives in the same building. This is the building and houses all the residents of Whittier. It's 14 stories tall and was built in 1957. The town of Whittier does have its own post office, which is also in that building. The residents do have everything they need here in town though, including a grocery store, city offices, a police department, a video rental store, a medical clinic, which are also in that building. The school is in that building, which is connected to this building by an underground tunnel so that the residents literally don't have to go outside. There's even an indoor playground in there. The reason the playground is indoors is the same reason there's a tunnel connecting the school. During the winter months, Whittier is known for cold weather, tons of snow, very intense winds with massive wind gusts, and of course, grizzly bears. So during the winter months, most residents choose not to leave the building. And with everything in one place, why would you? You want to plan your trips here carefully though, because you know that tunnel we talked about? It closes at 10:30 every night. So if you want to drive to Anchorage for an evening out and you don't make it back in time, that means you're going to be sleeping in your car, which I've been told is not too terribly uncommon. Well, this town certainly takes the phrase close-knit community to a whole new level. Looks like that wraps up another week and another adventure. To experience Alaska is to experience something truly authentic. It's the closest you can walk to the edge of the wilderness and peer back 1,000 years to hear the shout of its ancestors. And it's the kind of place that sticks with you long after you've left. It's been an incredible adventure, and I've learned things along the way, made amazing connections, and experienced firsthand just how truly remarkable this country is. And I'll leave you with this. People regret many things in life. Getting out of the house to explore this country firsthand is not one of them. And with that, that concludes our first season of The States You Think You Know. Thank you for joining me.